Today, I believe that I'm being called to lead by helping to clear the field in this race so that a positive, conservative message can rise to the top of the field.
Mark, Scott Walker, front runner in Iowa a few months ago, now out of the race. What happened to him?
The simplest way to think of it is what we call the virtuous cycle in politics. You rise in the polls, you get better press clips, you raise more money, you publicize how much money you raise, you're able to get better press clips, you rise in the polls, then you get to the debates, you do well, you rise in the polls. Walker did the opposite. He did the unvirtuous cycle. Worsening poll numbers, worsening fundraising, and horrible candidate performance, not just in the debates, but on the stump.
I believe a friend of ours, Governor Haley Barbour of Mississippi, former governor, likes to say that good gets better and bad gets worse, which is the encapsulation of the thing you just said. And there's no doubt that it's been bad for Scott Walker for a while and getting worse. Once you're in that downward spiral, it's really hard to get out of it. But there is a thing that we think of in politics as kind of athleticism, political athleticism. Are you able to play in the major leagues? And you think back on 2008 when a lot of people thought Mitt Romney on paper looked like a potential Republican nominee, did not have the skills in 2008. Tim Pawlenty, on paper, looked like a potential nominee, did not have the skills in 2012. Scott Walker is very much in that same mold. In a small room, in a large room, just didn't have what it took to play at the big league level.
You know, the debate performances were both well below mediocre.
Yep.
His campaign acknowledged he did poorly in the first one, had to do better in the second, and he didn't. But again, I'll say, day to day, Scott Walker giving inconsistent answers, not showing growth as a candidate. He could have tried to power through here, but the reality is what really got him out, with the imperative now to get out and not try to hang around, is fundraising. His fundraisers were having trouble getting other people to donate to Walker, and he was having trouble convincing his current fundraisers that he didn't need to shake up his team. He couldn't shake up his team because the ship had sunk so much already.
Right.
It was difficult to recruit anybody to come in.
Right. Well, and the fundraisers, as you know, follow the polls, and they saw the polls going down and couldn't see a strategy for turning that around. I also think there's the move they decided to make when they decided he could have either played the establishment game or he could have played the anti-establishment game. Once they decided early on in this campaign that they were going to go for the anti-establishment route, that put him in Donald Trump's crosshairs. And no candidate has suffered more than Scott Walker at the hands of Donald Trump and the Trump effect in this race.
Yeah, the final thing I'll say before we move on is he'd not only fallen to 10th place in Iowa, but he had no traction in any of the other early states and no hope to gain there. All right, so Walker getting out of the race, in theory, should leave room for others. So, John, going forward, what is the impact on the other candidates and on the race now?
Well, look, I mean, Walker had obviously fallen a lot. There weren't that many people who were Walker supporters anymore for anybody to try to pick up. But the bottom line is that he still was, if he was plausible anywhere, it was in Iowa. So having a potential Iowa caucus winner out of the race is good for the other potential Iowa caucus winners. People like Ted Cruz, people like Mike Huckabee even, people like Ben Carson, and people like Donald Trump. Anybody who stood a chance of winning in Iowa now has one potential rival who's out of their way.
I have to say, a lot of Walker supporters bristled when I lumped him in with the establishment candidates. And even though he'd been running further to the right than some people thought he would, I still believe in the end in Iowa, his path to success was with a lot of establishment votes. That vote now is totally up for grabs. If Marco Rubio doesn't improve there, if Chris Christie doesn't improve there, I think this helps Jeb Bush. I've always thought the establishment vote there would be anywhere from a quarter of the vote to 35% of the vote, maybe even a little higher. And this leaves that vote wide open for an establishment figure, an office holder, a former office holder. Bush is competing there. Let's see now if Rubio or anyone else can go in and get some of that vote. Because in a big field, most of the attention is not on the establishment side. It's on the evangelical side, and it's on the anti-establishment side.
Well, I mean, who knows what made up Walker's dwindling corpse of supporters out there in Iowa. Some of them clearly were attracted to him for some of his anti-establishment kind of tough on immigration stance, some of the things that he put forward. Some, obviously, in the northeast corner of the state near Wisconsin might have been establishment voters of the kind you're talking about. But there's no doubt that if there's any electoral impact whatsoever of Walker getting out, it is in that one state and that one state only, because really you can count his supporters outside of Iowa on one set of hands. The
one impact are his bundlers. He does have some major league bundlers who've been supporting him. A member of the Ricketts family, a few others in New York, particularly in Wisconsin, a lot of wealthy people there. Those people are up for grabs, and you can bet that the other campaigns are already calling them, reaching out, trying to lock up their financial support, because there ain't nobody in this race, even Jeb Bush, who couldn't stand to gain a little bit more money off of Walker's carcass.
Right, and that is another way in which it's good for establishment candidates, because that's who those bundlers are, establishment bundlers that are left over.